Hello and welcome back to Shakesyear. We are working on The Rape of Lucrece, which is a very long poem about sexual violence towards women and suicidal ideation and war. So if any of those are triggers for you, please tune out right now. But if they are not, and you want to hear today's stanzas, we're going to look at stanzas 221 to 224. When Lucrece is looking at this painting of the siege of Troy, she went to look at this painting because she needed to kill some time until her husband is going to come home and perhaps avenge her, but at least she'll be able to tell her story to her husband. But she's been looking at this painting and she saw Hecuba, with whom she very much identified, and then she's been looking at the other faces, and the faces that were very mournful, she was trying to give them a voice, give them a tongue so that they could grieve appropriately. And she was going through the painting and she finds this one character who looked sort of beyond grief, and it turns out that this is Sinon, who is known as a traitor. He was a Greek soldier who convinced the Trojans to bring the great big Trojan horse into Troy. So it's sort of his fault that Troy fell. And she's looking at him and she's like, but he looks so normal. How could such a normal looking person be responsible for such a horrible act? And she was about to say, sort of exactly that. And then she remembered Tarquin, Sextus Tarquinius, because he looked totally normal before he came into her home and raped her. And she continues on in stanza 221 by saying, "For even a subtle Sinon here is painted, so sober sad, so weary and so mild, as if with grief or travail he had fainted. To me came Tarquin, armed, so beguiled with outward honesty, but yet defiled with inward vice, as Priam him did cherish, so did I Tarquin, so my Troy did perish. Look, look, how listening Priam wets his eyes to see those borrowed tears that Sinon sheds. Priam, why art thou old and yet not wise? For every tear he falls, a Trojan bleeds. His eye drops fire, no water thence proceeds. Those round clear pearls of his that move thy pity are balls of quenchless fire to burn thy city. Such devils steal effects from lightless hell, for Sinon in his fire doth quake with cold, and in that cold hot burning hell fire. And in that cold, hot burning fire doth dwell. These contraries such unity do hold, only to flatter fools and make them bold. So Priam's trust false Sinon's tears doth flatter, that he finds means to burn his Troy with water. Here, all enraged, such passion her assails, that patience is quite beaten from her breast. She tears the senseless Sinon with her nails, comparing him to that unhappy guest whose deed hath made herself detest. At last she smilingly with this gives o'er. Fool, fool, quoth she, his wounds will not be sore. So she's still looking at the painting and she is railing against Sinon, being like, how can you do this? How can you be so secretive? How can you, oh, right. That's exactly how, that's the same thing that Tarquin did to me. Look how you seem to be normal, you seem to be fine, all of that stuff, but the same as Sextus Tarquinius took advantage of me. Your secrecy is making loads of Trojans die, and that's not cool. It's your stoicness is kind of screwing everybody else over. And then the last of these stanzas is back to the narrator talking and describing how looking at Sinon and feeling all of these things and coming to these realizations, she starts tearing at the painting and ripping him up and, you know, tearing him out of the painting, because that's what she needs to do in this moment. And she's going to continue on with that. And in the next stanzas, I will see you tomorrow for that. Mwah.